earthly spirits, astral planes. When my hypnosis subjects describe their ascent into the spirit world as rising through misty layers of translucent light, I am reminded of the astral planes we read about in Eastern texts. I must confess that I am not at all attracted to the rigid stair-step quality of exactly 7 planes of existence, from low to high, which come from Eastern spiritual philosophy. This is due to the fact that my clients see no evidence of all these planes. It is a human failing to label concepts as a means of codification. In my descriptions about the spirit world, I am as guilty of this practice as everyone else. Perhaps it is best that we simply take those precepts which make spiritual sense to us and reject the rest, regardless of the age of certain ideas or who tells us they are true. The reason for my objections to a rigid formula of specific planes of existence from Earth to a Godhead is that these states are unnecessary inhibitors. All my research with subjects in a higher state of consciousness indicates to me that upon death we go directly from one astral plane around Earth through the gateway into the spirit world. It does not matter if my subject is a young soul or a highly advanced older soul. Right after death they all tell me their soul passes through a dense atmosphere of light around the astral plane of Earth. This light has patches of darkish grey but no impenetrable black zones. Many describe a tunnel effect. All souls from Earth then quickly move into the bright light of the spirit world. This is a single ethereal space without zones or barriers around it. In the spirit world itself, all the so-called spaces or places available to the reincarnating soul are congruent. For instance, the akashik record traditions of Eastern thought don't appear to my subjects as being on some fourth causal plane separate from other functional areas. My subjects call these records life books, which are stored in symbolic libraries that are seen adjacent to other spiritual places. One acknowledge there is much beyond the spiritual experience of the reincarnating soul and therefore out of my range of inquiry. Perhaps the whole idea of cosmic planes is basically an attempt to conceptualize stages of ethereal awareness as opposed to movement prevented by barriers. Historically, specific demarcations of planes that enclose the underworld, a circumflex designed for certain unworthy souls, have been more prevalent in human thinking. I will discuss this further in Chapter 6. When my subjects tell of traveling interdimensionally, I suppose one could interpret this as soul movement through planes. The term plane is not used nearly as much as the words levels, edges, borders, and divisions, except when a client refers to Earth. People in hypnosis report that within the astral plane surrounding Earth, alternate or coexistent realities are part of our physical world. Apparently, within these realities, non-material beings can be seen by some people in our physical reality. I have been told of multitudes of interdimensional spheres that are used by souls for training and recreation from the spirit world. Spiritual boundaries can be as small as the glass-like divisions between cluster groups, or as large as the zones between universes. I am told all spatial zones have vibrational properties that allow for soul passage, only when their energy waves are attuned to the proper frequency. The more developed souls explain that absolute time as we know it does not seem to exist in these areas. Does the physical world of Earth have similar characteristics that are unseen by most of us? I had a thoughtful client who wrote me the following after his session: "Working with you has made me realize that our reality is like a movie projector showing us images on a three-dimensional screen of sky, mountains, and seas. If a second projector, with its own imprint of alternating light frequencies and space-time sequences, was synchronized with the first, both realities could exist simultaneously with material and non-material entities in the same zone. If what people in a trance state tell me about this system has validity, etheric beings will be capable of existing in different realities within the same astral plane surrounding Outer, indeed on Earth itself. The vibrational energy forces around Earth are in constant flux. It seems to me that if these magnetic fields change density, they would produce cyclic variations over centuries of human time. Therefore, we may be more or less receptive to viewing spirits on Earth in any given century. Perhaps the ancients really could see more than we do in the modern world." Nature spirits. On a national TV show, a woman reported that she had seen elves in her vineyard. She said that in the beginning she only heard them and was a little concerned about her sanity. In time she was able to talk to them and a few became visible to her. She described them as being about 2 feet high with pointed ears and wearing baggy pants. Of course, many people in her area thought she was crazy when this news got out. The advice she received from these beings about what to use in her soil to increase the quantity and quality of grape production over that of the neighboring farms soon caused many of them to take her more seriously. When the story was released, this woman was invited to have her brain waves tested. When her senses were stimulated, it was found that portions of her brain were capable of a much higher energy output than normal. I had a client who also claimed to have such abilities. She was an old soul and in a deep trance state said, "Fairy folk were here long before the rise of our civilizations and have never left. Most of us do not see them today, as in ancient times, because they are so old their density has become very light, while our earth bodies still have heavy energy." I questioned her further and she added, "While a rock has a 1D density, a tree would be a 2D and our bodies are at the 3D level. Thus the beings of nature would be invisible with a transparency registering between 4D and 6D. When I think of the woman who saw elves in her vineyard, I see a picture in my mind. If we could look at Earth with X-ray vision, it might resemble a series of overlaid, clear plastic topographical sheets. These vibrational energy layers vary in density and denote alternate realities. To me, certain gifted people might be able to see within these layers, but most of us are unable to do so. It is also my belief that much of our folklore comes from the memories souls have of their experiences on other physical and mental worlds. What they have to say about these experiences while under hypnosis conforms in some respects to the myths and legends of Earth. These soul associations include spirits in trees and plants as well as connections to the elements of air, water and fire. Folklore and soul memory will be explored further in later chapters. Ghosts. Many researchers into the paranormal have written about ghosts. I do not consider myself proficient in this field, although I have had some exposure with souls as ghosts. At my lectures I am often asked how benevolent spirit guides can allow these beings to wander around lost, unhappy and alone. My contribution to the study of ghosts will be to review what I feel are some misconceptions and to explain this phenomenon from the perspective of the ghost rather than from those who see them on earth. When I began to devote my hypnotherapy practice exclusively to the study of life between lives, it took years before a client came to me who had been a ghost for an appreciable amount of time after a former life. I don't consider short-timers ghosts in the traditional sense. For instance, I had a client who died young in a schoolhouse fire while saving the children. This teacher stayed around town for some months afterward, just checking on the kids and other people who were grieving at her untimely death. When I asked what prompted her to finally leave, she said, "Oh, eventually one got bored. I have come to the conclusion that only a small fraction of souls have ever been ghosts beyond the normal amount of time it takes for the new Discarnate to adjust before leaving Earth. I don't believe we are being haunted by that many ghosts around the world." The cases which follow will demonstrate that our guides do not compel or coerce us to move into the spirit world if our unfinished business is so overpowering that we do not want to leave Earth's astral plane. I find this is especially true if the soul has a permissive guide. Some guides have much more of a hands-off approach. Then, too, our guides typically don't make personal appearances next to us at the moment of death at ground zero. For most souls, the pulling sensation right after death is gentle and only grows more deliberate as we leave Earth's astral plane. There is no question that higher beings are instantly aware of our death. Yet the wishes of the deceased are respected. Keep in mind that time means nothing in the spirit world. Discarnates don't have a linear clock in their heads, so staying behind for days, months, or years doesn't have the same relevance as with incarnates. A ghost who has haunted an English castle for 400 years and finally returns to the spirit world may feel in spirit time this amounted to 40 days, or even 40 hours. Some people have the misconception that ghosts don't know they are dead or how to escape their situation. Yes, in a sense, they are trapped. But this is a condition of mental obstruction rather than any material hindrance. Souls are not lost in some confined astral plane, and they do know they have made a transition out of life on Earth. The ghosts' confusion lies in the obsessive attachment they have to places, people, and events where they can't let go. These actions of self-displacement are voluntary, but special guides, called Redeemer Masters, constantly watch for signs that the known disturbed spirits are ready to exit. We have the right to self-determination even with our death experience. Spiritual guides will honor poor decision-making. From what I have been able to observe, ghosts are less mature spirits who have trouble freeing themselves from earthly contaminations. This is particularly true if their stay in limbo is for prolonged periods in Earth years. The reasons for staying behind are varied. Perhaps the life ended in an unexpected manner, which caused a deviation from a major path. These souls may feel their free will has been thwarted in some way. Quite often there was a terrible trauma connected to the ghost's death. Perhaps they want to try and protect a person they care about from danger. In 1994, a young woman driving at night on a road not far from my house in the Sierra Nevada mountains tumbled down a steep embankment and was killed. No one had seen the accident or noticed the wreck. 50 feet down the hill where for 5 days her 3-year-old son clung to life. This accident attracted national attention when it was reported that a passing motorist saw a ghostly apparition of a nude young woman lying on the highway directly above the wreckage. This was a dramatic way for this ghost to be noticed, and it worked because her child was found just in time to save his life. I find the underlying cause behind disturbed spirits to be a sudden change in their planned karmic direction that they perceive to be not only unexpected but unjust. The most common cases of ghosts appear to involve souls who were murdered or wronged by another person in life. My next case begins as a typical ghost story but then reveals how these matters are resolved constructively for the ghost. The abandoned soul. Belinda came to see me because of an overwhelming sense of sadness she was unable to comprehend based upon her current life experience. During my intake interview I learned she was 47 and had never been married. She moved to California from the East Coast after a stormy breakup with a man called Stuart some 20 years before. Belinda cared for Stuart, but she had broken off their engagement after making a decision to change her life and come west to pursue a new career. She asked Stuart to come with her, but he did not want to leave his job and his family. Stuart pleaded with Belinda to marry him and stay in the area where they had both grown up, but she refused. Belinda told me that Stuart was devastated by her leaving him, but he wouldn't follow her. Eventually, Stuart married someone else. Some years later, Belinda said she met Bert and they had an intensely passionate relationship for a while, but eventually he left her for another woman. I wondered if this was the source of Belinda's unexplained sadness, but she told me no, she had been hurt, but that it was a good thing she hadn't married Bert. Belinda now realized that besides his being an unfaithful lover, she and Bert were temperamentally unsuited. Belinda added that, for some reason, long before her relationships with men began, she had these strange feelings of abandonment and loss. Case 14. It is my custom to move subjects into their most immediate past life before we enter the spirit world. This hypnosis technique allows for a more natural mental passage following a death scene. I asked Belinda to pick a critical scene to open our discussion about her former life. She chose one of great mental anguish. She said she was a young woman by the name of Elizabeth living on a large farm near Bath, England, in the year 1897. Elizabeth was on her knees holding the coattails of her husband, Stanley, who was dragging her through the front doorway of their manor house. After 5 years of marriage, Stanley was leaving her. Dr. N, what is Stanley saying to you at this moment? S now begins to sob. He says, I'm sorry about this, but I need to get away from this farm and go out to see the rest of the world. Dr. N, how do you respond, Elizabeth? S, I am imploring, begging Stanley not to leave because I love him so much and that I will try harder to make him happy here. My arms are aching from holding his coat and being dragged down the hall to the front steps. Drive. N, what does your husband say? S, still crying, Stanley says, it's not you, really. I'm just sick of this place. I'll be back. Dr. N, do you think he means it? S, oh, I know a part of him loves me in some way, but his need to escape this life and all he has known since he was a boy is too overpowering. After this statement my subject's body begins to shake uncontrollably. Dr. N. After soothing her a bit, tell me what is happening now, Elizabeth. It's about over. I can't hold him any longer. My arms are not strong enough, they hurt. Subject rubs her arms, I fall down the rest of the steps in front of the servants. I don't care. Stanley gets on his horse and rides away while I watch helplessly. Dr. N. Do you ever see him again? No, I only know he went to Africa. Dr. N. How do you maintain yourself, Elizabeth? He left me the estate, but I do not manage it well. I let most of the staff and workers go. In time we have almost no livestock and I am barely subsisting, but I cannot leave the farm. I must wait for him should he finally decide to come back to me. Dr. N. Elizabeth, I now want you to go to the last day of your life. Give me the year and the circumstances leading up to this day. It is 1919, subject is 52, and I am dying of influenza. I haven't put up much resistance in the last few weeks because I have just been existing. My loneliness and sorrow, the struggle to keep the farm going. My heart is broken. I now take Elizabeth through her death scene and attempt to bring her into the light. It is no use because she remains grounded to the farm. I soon discover this rather young soul is about to become a ghost. Dr. N. Why are you resisting moving up away from Earth's astral plane? I won't go. I can't leave yet. Dr. N. Why not? I must wait longer at the farm for Stanley. Dr. N. But you have waited for 22 years already and he has not returned. Yes, I know. Still, I just can't bring myself to go. Dr. N. What do you do now? I hover as a spirit. I talk to Elizabeth about her ghostly appearance and behavior around the farm. She does not zero in on Stanley's energy vibrations to locate him anywhere in the world, as an experienced soul would do. Further questioning indicates that Elizabeth has the idea that if she can scare away any potential buyers, the estate might remain in the family. Indeed, the property does sit idle with no new occupants because everyone in the district knows it is haunted. Elizabeth tells me she flies around the manor house crying over her abandonment. Dr. N. How long do you wait for Stanley in Earth years? 4 years. Dr. N. Does this seem like a long time for you? What do you do? It is nothing, a few weeks. I cry and moan over my sadness. I can't help it. I know this scares people, especially when I knock things over. Dr. N. Why do you want to scare people who have done you no harm? To express my displeasure at what was done to me. Dr. N. Please explain to me how all this comes to an end. I am called. Dr. N. Oh, you have asked for a release from this sad situation. Long pause. Well, not actually. Sort of. But he knows I am about ready. He comes and says to me, don't you think this is enough? Dr. N. Who says this to you, and what happens? The Redeemer of lost souls calls to me and I move further away from Earth with him and we talk while waiting. Dr. N. Just a minute, is this your spirit guide? smiles for the first time. No, we are waiting for my guide. This spirit is Donny. He rescues souls like me. That's his job. Dr. N, what does Donny look like and what does he say to you? S laughs. He looks like a little gnome, with a wrinkled face and a top hat which is all beat up and his whiskers shake when he talks to me. He tells me if I want to stay longer one can, but wouldn't it be more fun to go home and see Stanley there? He is very comical and makes me laugh, but he is so gentle and wise. He takes me by the hand and we move to a beautiful place to talk more. Dr. N, tell me about this place and what happens to you next. S, well, this is a place for grieving souls like me and it looks like a beautiful meadow with flowers. Donny tells me to be joyful and he infuses my energy with love and happiness and purifies my mind. He lets me play like a child again among the flowers and tells me to chase the butterflies while he rests in the sun. Dr. N, it sounds wonderful. How long does all this go on? S, rather put off by my question, for as long as I want. Dr. N, during this time, does Donny talk to you about Stanley and your behavior as a ghost? S reacts with distaste. He absolutely does not do that. The Redeemer is not Tishin, subject's guide. Those questions will come later. This is my time to rest. Donny's old face is so full of kindness and love, he never scolds. He just encourages me to play. His job is to bring my soul back to health by helping me cleanse my mind. After Elizabeth's energy is rejuvenated, Donny escorts her to Tishin and kisses her goodbye. Then the preliminary evaluations begin, as with a normal orientation for someone returning to the spirit world. I was able to access this conference with Elizabeth Belinda and it was instructive. In the beginning she stated that her life as an abandoned wife was wasted. Certainly, Elizabeth pined away much of her life in suffering, without making adjustments or accepting change. Under Tishin's guidance, she saw that this lesson was not wasted. Belinda today is a very independent and productive woman who has weathered many emotional storms. By now, I am sure the reader has figured out that Stanley is Stuart. Today, when I relate this part of the story to people, some say to me, "Oh, good, she was able to turn the tables on that bastard with the same treatment to get revenge for what he did to her." This thinking shows how we misunderstand karmic lessons. The souls of Elizabeth and Stanley volunteered to assume their roles today as Belinda and Stuart. Stuart needed to feel the emotional pain of what he had wrought on Elizabeth. As Stanley, he had made a commitment of marriage in a culture and time when women were quite dependent upon their husbands. Because his action to leave her was swift and uncompromising, it was particularly brutal. This does not excuse Elizabeth, who took no responsibility for making changes in her life. Her suffering and non-acceptance of the situation was so extreme she ultimately became a ghost. By assuming Stanley's role in her current life, the soul of Belinda had to learn what motivated Stanley's feelings of entrapment in an undesirable location. Belinda was not Stuart's wife when she left the East Coast, so the commitment was not quite the same as Stuart had with her in their former life when he was Stanley. Yet in this life they were lovers again, and Stuart felt forsaken by Belinda's desire to leave their town, friends and family to seek adventure and opportunity elsewhere. Because she had the courage to do this alone, Belinda's soul has now acquired the insight that Stanley did not leave her out of a malicious desire to inflict emotional pain. Stanley wanted freedom, and so did Belinda. Belinda has carried the mental imprint of this past life into her life today. From a karmic standpoint, Belinda has a dose of residual sorrow as Elizabeth, which she was unable to comprehend until our session. Belinda told me she still thinks about Stuart, and he probably cannot forget her since she was his first love. They are soulmates in the same group, and I think it is likely the two of them will assume a new role together in their next life, balancing what they have learned in the last 2 lives. For those of you who are curious why Belinda had to endure the brief unrequited love affair with Bert, this was a test. Bert is another member of the same soul group, and he volunteered to trigger Belinda's soul memories of being Elizabeth to see if she had learned to stand up to the emotional pain of a broken heart. Bert's actions also served as a wake-up call for Belinda to realize in her current life how Stuart felt when she left him. The blade of karma cuts both ways. Spiritual duality. Some years ago a magazine article recounted the travels of an American woman who was driving through the English countryside and felt inexplicably drawn to a small side road away from her intended destination. Soon she came to a deserted old manor house, not Stanley's. The woman was told by the caretaker the house was haunted by a ghost who looked very much like her. Walking around the grounds she felt an eerie connection to something. Presumably she was there to help release herself. The two portions of her soul could have been drawn to each other in the same mysterious way that two people living parallel lives with one soul might be if there was a compelling purpose. In Chapter 1,1 touched upon the duality of souls and how they are able to divide their energy to live more than one life at a time. A portion of the energy of most souls never leaves the spirit world during their incarnations. I'll discuss soul division further in the next chapter, but splitting soul energy is particularly relevant to the study of ghosts. In my last case, even though Elizabeth was in limbo for a while as a ghost, another part of her energy remained in the spirit world working on lessons and interacting with other souls. That other portion may also incarnate again and move on to a new life, which is what I believe happened with the woman who found the haunted house. I disagree with some ghost authorities who state that ghostly forms only represent an earthly shell without a soul's core of consciousness. There are life cycles when souls choose to take less energy than they should into a human body. However, even if they become ghosts, such souls are far more than an empty shell of energy. One would think that the balance of a ghost's energy remaining in the spirit world ought to be more helpful to their disturbed alter ego still hanging around Earth. From what I hear, most immature souls who cross over are unable to perform this transfer and integration of energy by themselves. The following excerpt is a report I received from the soulmate of a ghost. This ghost is a young level I soul who was my subject's first husband. Case 15. Dr. N. You have told me that your first husband, Bob, was a ghost after his last life. Please explain the circumstances here. Bob became a ghost because he was killed early in our marriage. In that life, he was so overcome with despair and concern for me he wouldn't leave. Dr. N. I see. Can you tell me approximately how much of his total energy he carried with him into that life? nods her head in assent. Bob had only about a quarter of his energy, and it was not enough for him in this mental crisis. He misjudged. Stops. Dr. N, do you think that if Bob had taken more of his energy to allow for this contingency, he might not have become a ghost? I can't answer that, but I think it would have made him stronger, more resistant to sorrow. Dr. N, then why did he take so little energy to Earth? Well, because he wanted to be more engaged with his work in the spirit world. Dr. N, I'm confused about why Bob's guide didn't just make him take more energy to Earth. Shakes her head negatively. No. We are not pushed around that way. We are free to make our choices. And Bob didn't have to become a ghost, you know. Bob was advised to take more, but he is stubborn, and he was also considering another life at the same time, a parallel life. Dr. N, let me make sure I understand. Bob underestimated his capacity to function more normally in a crisis with a body having only 25% of his energy capacity. Sadly, I'm afraid so. Dr. N, even though in death that body was gone. It didn't matter. The effects were still with him, and he didn't have enough strength to combat the circumstances. Dr. N, how long did Bob stay a ghost before the rest of his energy was restored to him in the spirit world? Not long, about 30 years. He couldn't seem to help himself. Lack of experience. Part of his lesson. Then our teacher was called by, those beings who patrol Earth watching over the disturbed ones. To go get the rest of him to come home. Dr. N, they have been called the Redeemers of Lost Souls by some people. That's a good name for them. Only Bob's soul wasn't lost exactly, only tormented. Souls in seclusion. My next case involves a more advanced subject who provided me with details about entities who are not ghosts but won't go home after death. As the case unfolds, we will see that there are two motivating factors that drive these types of souls into seclusion. Case 16. Dr. N, are there people who die who are not ready to return to the spirit world? Yes, some souls who are released from their physical bodies don't want to leave Earth. Dr. N, I suppose they are all ghosts. No, but they can be if that is their desire. Most are not. They simply don't want to be in contact with anyone. Dr. N, and their spiritual energy does not go home right after death. That's right, except there is a part of their energy which never left the spirit world. Dr. N, so I have heard. But let me ask if you consider these secluded souls as short-timers, or do they stay in limbo for a long time in Earth? Years? It varies. Some want to return as quickly as possible in a new body. These souls don't want to give up their physical form for any length of time. They are different from most of us who want to rest and go home to study. Many of this type have been real frontline warriors on Earth. They want to maintain a continuity with their physical life. Dr. N, well, it is my understanding that our guides won't permit us to be in some kind of holding pattern near Earth and go right into our new life. Don't these souls know they must go through the normal process of returning back to their groups, receiving counseling, studying their lessons, and taking some part in the selection of a new body? Laughs, you right, but the guides don't force those in extreme distress to return home until they see the benefits of doing so. Dr. N. Yes, but they won't give them a new body right away until after some sort of period of readjustment. S. Shrugs. Yes, that's true. Dr. N. Is it also true that other disturbed souls don't want to go back to Earth and won't go back where they belong in the spirit world either? S. That's another type. Dr. N. But if both soul types don't prowl around Earth as discarnates bothering people as ghosts, should I be calling them disturbed when all they want is to be left alone? S. They are divergent. Their actions are the result of something unfinished, traumatic, overwhelming. They are unwilling to let go, and this conduct is not usual. They won't talk to their teachers because of the extent of their unhappiness. Dr. N. Why don't their guides just take charge and pull them up deeper into the spirit world despite their resistance? S. If souls were forced to do what is right for them, they would learn nothing from getting into a funk and shutting themselves up from everyone. Dr. N. Okay, but I still wonder why the souls who want to come back right away with no stopovers in the spirit world can't just be given a new body immediately. S. Can't you see that placing a disturbed soul into a new body would be totally unfair to a baby just starting life? These souls have a right to be in seclusion, but they will eventually make the decision to ask for assistance. They must come to the conclusion they can't progress alone. Being given a new body won't help them. Dr. N. Where do the souls go who don't want to wander the earth as ghosts but won't go home? S. Ruefully, it's any space they want to create for themselves. They design their own reality with memories of a physical life. Some souls live in nice places like a garden setting. Others are those who have harmed people, for instance, have designed terrible spaces for themselves, like a prison, a room with no windows. In these spaces they box themselves in so they can't experience much light or make contact with anyone. It is self-imposed punishment. Dr. N. I have heard that disturbed souls are the ones associated with evil are taken into seclusion in the spirit world. S. That's correct, but at least they are ready to face the music and have their energy healed properly with love and care. Dr. N. Can you give me some indication of how our guides deal with all types of souls in self-imposed exile? S. They give them time to sweat it out. This is a challenge for teachers. They know these souls are concerned about their evaluations and the reactions from their soul groups. They are full of negative energy and not thinking clearly. It may take many reassurances by those who wish to help them before these souls agree to give up their self-imposed places of confinement. Dr. N. I assume there are as many techniques of persuasion as there are guides. S. Sure. Depending upon the range of skill. Some teachers will not go near a disturbed student until that soul is so sick of being in seclusion they voluntarily call for help. This can take quite a while. Pause, then continues, other teachers dropping off and for chats. Dr. N. Eventually, will all these disturbed souls release themselves? S. Pause, let's put it this way. Eventually, all will be released one way or another through different forms of encouragement, laughs, or persuasion. Those of you who are familiar with my work know that I have strong convictions about the influence soul memory has on human thought, the isolation and solitude of souls expressed in case 16 might well give one the impression of a Christian purgatory as a place of atonement. Could this religious concept have sprung from the fragmented soul memories of seclusion in the spirit world only to be subverted on earth? There are similarities and great differences between my findings about soul seclusion and purgatory as defined by the Church. Christian doctrine has purgatory as a state of self-purification for those who must eliminate all traces of sin before proceeding on to heaven. I hear that some souls in seclusion undergo self-cleansing while others may require energy restoration. However, we don't come out of seclusion totally purified, or there would be no need to reincarnate again. Also, soul confinement is not banishment. In recent years, the less conservative elements of the Christian Church do not stress hell as much as in the past. Nevertheless, the Church still rejects universalism, the belief that everyone goes to heaven. To them, souls who die in a state of unrepentant mortal sin bypass purgatory and descend into hell, where they suffer the punishments of eternal fire. To be eternally damned, according to the Church, is a separation from God as opposed to those who are blessed. The Christian churches simply do not accept the concept that everything is forgivable in the afterlife. In my experience, all souls are repentant because they hold themselves accountable for their choices. From all I have learned, soul energy cannot be destroyed or made non-functional, but it can be reshaped and purified of earthly contamination. Souls who demand to be left in solitude after death on earth are not self-destructing, rather some feel isolation is necessary out of concern for contaminating other souls with negative energy. They are also souls who don't feel contaminated, but they are not ready to be consoled by anyone. The important thing to keep in mind is that souls have the ownership of their energy and must ask their guides to be taken to the centers of healing and rejuvenation in the spirit world. These are therapeutic areas away from their soul groups where there is solitude and time for personal reflection. However, this is a form of directed therapy. The disturbed souls case 16 talked about had not yet chosen to receive help. Or, my case histories indicate to me that after death we have the right to refuse assistance from our spiritual masters for as long as we wish. I have been asked at lectures if the places of self-imposed exile are lower planes or lower worlds. I can't help but feel these ideas come from fear-based dogma. Perhaps it's a question of semantics. I think a better translation of this state is a self-imposed space, a vacuum of subjective reality designed by the soul who wants to be alone, separated. Space, away from the soul's spiritual center, is one of its own making. I don't see these souls as being lost in some realm divided from the spirit world where others reside. The disjunction is mental. Souls of silence know they are immortal, but they feel impotent. Consider what they do in solitude without help. They relive their acts over and over again, playing back all the karmic implications of what they have done to others and what has been done to them in their last life. They may have harmed others or been harmed by them. Quite often I hear they feel victimized by events over which they had little control. They are sad and mad at the same time. They have no interaction with their soul groups. These souls suffer from self-recrimination and restricted insight. One must admit these conditions fall within some of the definitions of purgatory. Sartre said, "We have an imaginary self of the world with tendencies and desires and a real self." To this statement I would add that of William Blake, perception of our true self may threaten emergence with that self. In their space, the souls of solitude have given up their imaginary self for a large dose of self-flagellation. Solitude and quiet self-analysis is an important and normal aspect of soul life within the spirit world. The difference here is that these disturbed souls are not yet ready to seek relief from their torment by asking for help, moving forward, and making changes. It's a good thing that these souls make up only a small fraction of the population of souls crossing over each day. Discarnates who visit Earth. There are entities who travel to Earth as tourists and have never incarnated on our planet. Some are quite advanced while others are maladapts. The character of these beings has been described to me as friendly, helpful and peaceful, or distant, aggravating and even contentious. For thousands of years I believe they have been considered in our folklore as beings with the capacity to create both fear and enchantment. Our mythology alludes to the differences between light beings who are airy and whimsical and darker beings who are heavy, with ugly temperaments. Some of these pre-Christian legends have spilled over into current religious beliefs of a light or dark tableau of grace or violence in the afterlife. Quite a number of my subjects have told me that between their lives on Earth they travel as discarnates to other worlds both in and out of our dimension. Some explain that they see other non-physical entities on these trips. This is why it has been surprising to me that only occasionally do I receive small amounts of information from clients about encountering other light beings on Earth. My clients see them when they decide to visit Earth as discarnates themselves between lives. The reports are intriguing, as the next case illustrates. Case 17. Dr. N. Since you have described to me how much you enjoy traveling to both physical and mental worlds between your lives, I am curious what you know about other beings you might see when you come to Earth. They float through our reality here on Earth just as I do in other dimensions. Dr. N. Do you know many souls who regularly incarnate on Earth that visit here like yourself? No. As a matter of fact, it's not all that common, but I like to come. Many of my friends enjoy a change in scenery between lives and stay away from Earth. When I come here, sometimes I see strange beings. I don't know. Dr. N. What do they look like? Odd, strange shapes, wispy or dense. Not human-looking. Dr. N. Let's talk about this. You have told me of the ability souls have in the spirit world to project a human form. What do you and your friends look like as spirits on Earth? Rather the same, but on a dense world such as Earth, we shift more on the physical side to add flavor to what we once were here. Dr. N. You mean you are in more of a corporeal state? Yes. Sort of. On worlds such as Earth we are more defined. Around the edges are the way we outline a human body in a transparent fashion as soft, diffused light. In the spirit world when we assume body features, say of a former life, we glow all over with full-strength energy. Dr. N. Can a non-physical being, even in a diffused state, be visible to living inhabitants? S. Chuckles. Oh, yes. But only certain people can see us as apparitions, and then not always. Dr. N. Why is that? S. It has to do with their level of receptivity of perception at certain moments when we are in their area. Dr. N. If you will, please put yourself in the position of a transparent light being on Earth and tell me what you do here. I want you to include any non-human spirits you see who have had no incarnation experiences on our planet. S. Happily, as visitors, we saw through the mountains and valleys, the cities and small towns. For us, there is a vicarious picking up of the energy of Earth's struggles. It's always interesting to bump into different kinds of beings who are also on tour here. They know Earth's inhabitants are afraid of us, and most of these beings would like to dispel the fear. Yet, those of us from Earth know we can't afford to get entangled with people's lives in any major way. Dr. N. Meaning that some beings from other worlds have no such reservations? S. Yes. Dr. N. I assume by entangled, you mean interfering in someone's karmic path? S. Well, yes. Dr. N. But why not help people if you can? S. Abruptly, and maybe with some guilt. Look, we are not guides assigned to Earth. We are only visitors, as are the others we see here. Occasionally, it's a vacation trip for all of us. If we come across a condition going bad, we might take a moment to briefly turn our head toward a better alternative path. We do get pleasure out of nudging people to act in their better interest rather than turning the wrong way. Dr. N. If you happen to be in the right place at the right time. S. Right, to give a gentle push in a better direction at a crucial moment, raises voice, a circumflex, no fixing of major trouble spots, you understand? Dr. N. Then you will be considered as good spirit. Yes. S. Laughs, as opposed to what? Dr. N. In an attempt to draw this subject out to bad spirits who interfere with life forms for the pleasure of doing harm. S. Abruptly, who told you this? There are no evil spirits, only inept ones, and those who are careless and indifferent. Dr. N. How about sad spirits, or ones who are disoriented or playful? Spirits, can't they cause harm? S. Oh, yes, but it is not premeditated evil. Pause, and then adds, not all of us are in the same category, soaring around Earth on a lark. Dr. N. That's what I was getting at. I'm thinking of ghosts. S. These are spirits grounded here by their own volition. Dr. N. How about the spirits who are strangers to Earth? S. Pause. They are other spirits who travel interdimensionally who we consider to be maladapts. They do not seem to have any sensitivity to Earth. They are not knowledgeable about human beings. Dr. N. Coaxing, and can they cause problems for the living? S. Edgy. Yes, sometimes. Although it might be unintentional. They are not bad or evil, just clumsy, mischievous children. The younger light beings can get lost between and within dimensions. Their amusements distract them. We consider them as naughty youngsters. These pranksters think Earth is their playground where they can engage in devilish behavior with susceptible, gullible people and scare the hell out of them. They have a hilarious time before they are caught by one of the rovers, tracker guides, sent to recapture these truants. Dr. N, is this a common occurrence? S, actually, I don't think so. They are like children who escape from the watchful eyes of parents once in a while. Dr. N, so you don't see malevolent spirits directed here by some demonic force? S, promptly, no, sometimes we might run into a dark, heavy entity who is disoriented by the Earth's sphere. This place is dense, but they come from places even more dense. Anyway, they want to cling to us because they don't know what they are doing. We call them the heavies because of their lack of mobility. Dr. N, what about the spirits you spoke of who are just indifferent to people on Earth? S, deep sigh, yeah, they can scare people. This is because some of them have a disruptive nature. They are not considerate. Dr. N, bulls in a china shop. S, ye ha no adaptation to local customs. Dr. N, and, in these cases with different types of spirits who might be aggravating to the people here, do you try to intervene in some way? S, yes, if we come across them acting like rogues we put a stop to it and try and push them away. This is very infrequent. Most out-of-worlders are serious and respectful. Pause. I want to stress that we are not philanthropists. This is our recreation time and we want to be free of responsibility. Dr. N, okay then, why would an inept spirit of any sort come to Earth for whatever reason and be allowed to cause trouble, even inadvertently, for the people living here? Do their guides lack good parenting skills? S, unruffled, well, too much monitoring makes for dull children. If they were on a tight leash, how would they learn? They are not going to be allowed to destroy or do great harm. Dr. N, one last question. Do you think that all the kinds of spirits we have been talking about exist in large numbers swarming all over Earth? S, not at all. Compared to Earth's population, only a tiny fraction. Judging by my own experience here, there are times when only a few are around and I may not see them at all. It is not a constant thing. It's more cyclic. There is a mystery to that which is invisible to the living, when only our senses tell us something is there. I wonder if spiritual travelers don't engender memories within us of recognition of what we once were and will be again. Demons or divas. I think it is fitting that I close this chapter with a summary of some misconceptions we have about the existence of evil spirits, good spirits and spiritual influences on Earth. If I step rather heavily on any pet theories of the reader, please understand that my statements come from the reports of many hypnosis subjects in my practice. These subjects do not see the devil or demonic spirits floating around Earth. What they do feel when they are spirits is an abundance of negative human energy, exuding the intense emotions of anger, hate and fear. These disruptive thought patterns are attracted to the consciousness of other negative thinkers who collect and disseminate even more disharmony. All this dark energy in the air works to the detriment of positive wisdom on Earth. The ancients thought demons were flying beings who occupied the regions between heaven and earth and were not particularly wicked. The early Christian church elevated demons to the status of evil rulers of darkness. As fallen angels, they were able to disguise themselves as messengers of God rather than Satan in order to deceive humans. I think it is fair to say that within the more liberal religious communities today, demons represent our own inner misguided passions that can get us into trouble. In all my years of working with souls, never once have I heard a subject who was possessed by another spirit, unfriendly or otherwise. When I made this statement at one lecture, a man raised his hand and said, "That is all very well, O great Guru, but until you have placed everyone in the world under hypnosis, don't tell me about the absence of demonic forces." Of course, this is a valid argument against my hypothesis that such things as soul possession, evil demons, the devil and hell don't exist. Nevertheless, I can come to no other conclusion when all of my subjects, even those who came to me with conscious beliefs in demonic forces, reject the existence of such beings when they see themselves as spirits. Once in a while a client comes to me convinced they have been possessed by an alien entity or some sort of malevolent spirit. I have had other clients who believe an evil curse has been placed upon them from some past life behavior. As my hypnosis regression session moves into the superconscious mind of these people, typically we find one of three conditions. 1. Almost always the fear proves to be absolutely groundless. 2. Occasionally, a friendly spirit, often a dead relative, has been trying to reach them. My distraught client has misinterpreted the intent of this spirit who only wished to bring comfort and love. There has been miscommunication between the sender and receiver. Souls have little trouble with telepathy between themselves, but this does not mean all souls are adept communicators with incarnated people. 3. Very rarely, a disturbed, inept spirit has made contact because of some unresolved karmic issues they have on Earth. We saw this in Case 14. Researchers into the paranormal have come up with 3 more reasons, which ought to be added to my own as to why certain people believe they have been possessed by a demon. 4. Emotional and physical abuse as a child, which create feelings that the adult abuser represents an evil power who has total control. 5. Multiple personality disorder. 6. Periodic increases in the actions of electromagnetic fields around Earth which are sufficient enough to disrupt brain activity in a disturbed individual. The possibility that people can be possessed by a satanic being comes right out of medieval belief systems. It is fear-based and the result of theological superstition that has ruined countless lives over the last 1,000 years. Much of this nonsense has dissipated in the last 200 years, but it lingers with the fundamentalists. The exorcism of demons is still practiced by some religious groups. Frequently, I find that clients who come to me with concerns about possession have lives which seem to be out of their control and filled with a variety of personal obsessions and compulsions. People who hear voices commanding them to do bad things are likely to be schizophrenic if they are not possessed. Our physical world may have unhappy or mischievous spirits floating round, but they do not lock in and inhabit the minds of people. The spirit world is much too ordered to allow for such muddled solar activity. Being possessed by another being would not only abrogate our life contract but destroy free will. These factors form the foundation of reincarnation and cannot be compromised. The idea that satanic entities exists as outside forces to confuse and subvert people is a myth perpetuated by those who seek to control the minds of others for their own ends. Evil exists internally, initiated within the confines of the deranged human mind. Life can be cruel, but it is of our making here on this planet. Assuming that we are born evil, or that some external force has occupied the mind of an evil person, makes malevolence easier for some people to accept. It is a way of rationalizing premeditated cruelty, preserving our humanity, and absolving ourselves of responsibility, individually and collectively as a race. When we see cases of serial killers, or those of children who kill other children, we might label these people as either born killers, or under outside demonic influences. This saves us the trouble of finding out why these murderers enjoy inflicting pain by acting out their own pain. There are no soul monsters. People are not born evil. Rather they are corrupted by the society in which they live, where practicing evil satisfies the cravings of depraved personalities. This emanates from the human brain. Studies of the psychopath have shown that the excitement of inflicting pain on others without remorse satisfies an emptiness they feel within themselves. Practicing evil is a source of power, strength and control for inadequate people. Hate takes away that reality of a hateful life. The warped minds of these executioners tell them, if life is not worth living for me, why not take it away from somebody else? Evil is not genetic, although if the family has a history of violence and cruelty to their children, these acts are often passed on from one generation to the next as learned behavior. Violence and dysfunctional behavior from one adult member of a family is an internal emotional reaction that spills over to contaminate other younger members. This can lead to compulsive and destructive behavior from children of that family. How do these genetic and environmental disruptions to the body affect our soul? What I have found in my practice is that a soul's energy force may, during troubled times, dissociate from the body. They are those who feel they don't even belong to their bodies. If conditions are severe enough, these souls are prone to thoughts of suicide, but usually not taking the life of another. One will have more to say about this condition in upcoming chapters. Part of this turmoil stems from conflicts between the soul's immortal character meshed to the temperament of the host brain with all its genetic baggage. There may also be influences of abnormal brain chemistry and hormonal imbalances affecting the central nervous system that might contaminate the soul. Another element I find is that immature souls often have difficulties handling the poor mental circuitry of disturbed human beings. There is a counteraction of the soul self versus the human self. A push-me-pull-you force is struggling to present a single ego to the world and not doing very well in the process. These are internal, not external forces at work. A disturbed mind does not need an exorcist but a competent mental health therapist. Souls don't represent all that is pure and good about a body, or they wouldn't be incarnating for personal development. Souls come to Earth to work on their own shortcomings. In terms of self-discovery, a soul may choose to act in conjunction with, or in opposition to, its own character in the selection of a human body. As an example, a soul combating tendencies towards selfishness and indulgence might not mix well with a human ego whose emotional temperament is disposed to engaging in hostile acts for self-gratification. Quite often, troubled people have suffered painful environmental trauma such as physical and emotional abuse as children. They have either internalized themselves, creating a shell to hide behind their pain, or externalized by mentally moving outside their bodies on a regular basis. These defense mechanisms are a means of survival to preserve our sanity. When a client tells me that they love to tune out and practice astral projection because the out-of-body experience makes them feel more alive, I look for disturbances. Indeed, I may not find anything other than curiosity, but an obsession with being away from the body indicates a desire to escape from current reality. It is perhaps for this reason I am troubled by the walk-in theory as another escape mechanism. I believe the whole idea of walk-ins to be a false concept. According to the proponents of this theory, tens of thousands of souls now on this planet came directly into their physical body, without going through the normal process of birth and childhood. We are told that these possessing souls are enlightened beings who are permitted to take over the adult body of a soul who wants to check out early because life has become too difficult. Therefore, the walk-in soul is actually performing a humanitarian act, according to devotees of this theory. I call this possession by permission. If this theory is true, then I must turn in my great Guru white robe and gold medallion. Not once, in all my years of working with subjects in regression, have I ever had a walk-in soul. Also, these people have never heard of any other soul in the spirit world associated with such practices. In fact, they deny the existence of this act because it would abrogate a soul's life contract. To give another soul permission to come in and take over your karmic life plan defeats the whole purpose of your coming to earth in the first place. It is deluded reasoning to assume that the walk-in would wish to complete their own karmic cycle in a body originally selected and assigned to someone else. If I am a senior in a high school trigonometry class, would I leave my class and go down the hall to a freshman algebra class where a student is struggling with an exam and tell him I'll finish the exam for him so he can leave early? This is a lose-lose situation for both students and what teacher would permit it. The whole walk-in theory is like suicide, although it is supposed to combat suicide by allowing the walk-out soul to escape responsibility for straightening out their life. The walk-out soul relinquishes ownership of its host body so a more advanced spirit who does not want to go to all the trouble of being in a child's body can take over. This is one of the major flaws of possession by permission. From everything I have learned about body assignments, it takes years for a soul to fully mold its energy vibrations with that of the host brain. The process begins when the baby is in a fetal state. All the essential elements of who we really are come from the soul assigned to a specific body from the beginning. Consider first the three is emanating from the soul: imagination, intuition, and insight. Then add such components as conscience and creativity. Do you think the adult human mind is not going to recognize the loss of its partner self to a new presence? Now, that would drive a host body insane as opposed to healing it. I tell people not to worry about losing their soul. It's with us for the duration because there are good reasons for having the particular body you occupy. Souls take their responsibility very seriously, even to the extent of being inside non-functional bodies. They are not materially trapped. For Instance, a soul may inhabit a comatose host body for many years and not abandon it until death. These souls are able to roam freely across the land, visiting other souls who might be making brief trips away from their bodies during normal sleep states. This is especially true of souls in the bodies of babies. Souls are very respectful of their host body assignments. Even if they are bored, they leave a small portion of their energy so they can return quickly if needed. Their wavelengths are like homing beacons who have fingerprinted their human partners. When a soul's energy does leave the human body, this does not provide an opportunity for some demonic being to rapidly move in and occupy a vacant mind. This is another superstition. Aside from the non-existence of such demonic beings in the first place, the mind is never completely vacant of a traveling soul's energy. A malevolent entity would be unable to squeeze in, even if it did exist. Evidently, residents of the spirit world are quite aware of our enthrallment with dark and nefarious specters who pose a danger to the soul. I have a most unusual and defining case which brought this to my attention. The ironic engagement of demonology employed in case 18 by my subject's teacher toward his hapless student is outrageous and unconventional but effective. This case illustrates how the almost brutal use of humor can be graphically applied in the spirit world to define our shortcomings on earth. Case 18 concerns the death experience of an evangelical preacher of the 1920s. This man had spent a lifetime seeing the devil in every nook and cranny of his town in the deep south. During my review of this life with the client who carried these memories, I was told my parishioners were shaken to their bones with my fiery sermons of the hell awaiting all sinful transgressors. I will begin this case with a scene as it unfolded right after my subject reaches the gateway. Case 18. Dr. N, you say that although things are not too clear, you are floating in bright light and someone is coming toward you? Yes, I am kind of disoriented. I haven't gotten used to things around here yet. Dr. N, that's fine. Just take your time and let the figure float toward you as you float toward it. Long pause, and then with a loud horrified exclamation, "Oh, God! No!" Dr. N, startled by this outcry, what's going on? Subject's body begins to shake uncontrollably. Oh! Lord Almighty! It's the devil! I knew it. I've gone to hell. Dr. N, grasping subject by the shoulders, now, take a deep breath and try to relax as we go through this together. Then, softly, you are not in hell. Cuts in with a shrill tone of voice. Oh, ye have, then why do one see the devil right in front of me? Dr. N, my subject's face is now covered in sweat and I use a tissue to wipe some of it away while continuing to reassure. Try to calm yourself. There is some misinterpretation here and we will find it soon. Paying no attention to me, the subject now begins to moan while rocking back and forth. Ahoo! It's over for me. I'm in hell. Dr. N, I break in now more forcefully. Tell me exactly what you see. Whispering at first and then loudly. Being. Demonic. Reddish green. Face. Horns. Wild-eyed. Fangs. The facial skin is like charred wood. Oh, sweet Jesus, why me of all people, who spoke so much in your name? Dr. N. What else do you see? S. With loathing, what else is there to see? Can't you understand? I am in front of the devil. Dr. N. Quickly, I meant the rest of the body. Look below the head and tell me what you see. S. With a violent shudder, nothing. Just a wispy ghost-like body. Dr. N. Stay with me. Doesn't this seem unusual to you that the devil would appear with no body? Move forward in time rapidly now and tell me what this figure does. S. My subject's body jerks up violently and then with a great sigh of relief he sags back into the chair. Oh, that bastard. I might have known. It's Scanlon. He is taking his mask off and smiling wickedly at me. Dr. N. Now I can relax. Who is Scanlon? S. My guide. This is his crude idea of a joke. Dr. N. What does Scanlon really look like now? S. Tall, aquiline features, grey hair. Full of mischief-making, as usual. Laughs with bravado, but still not fully recovered. I should have known. He caught me unawares this time. Dr. N. Does Scanlon make a habit of this sort of thing? Why frighten you just as you were coming into the spirit world a little disoriented? S. Defensively, listen, he is a great teacher. That's his way. He has got our whole group using masks, but he knows one don't like them much. Dr. N. Tell me why Scanlon used the devil's mask to scare you right after this life. Talk to him now. Note, I am quiet for a few moments while my subject mentally connects with Scanlon. S. After a period of silence, I had it coming. Oh, I know it. I spent a lifetime preaching about the devil, scaring good people, telling them they were going to hell if they didn't pay attention to me. Scanlon gave me a dose of my own medicine. Dr. N. And how do you feel now about his methods? S. Chagrined. He made his point. Dr. N. I want to ask you a blunt question. Did you really believe what you told your parishioners about seeing demonic forces everywhere, or were you motivated by something else? S. Intensely, no, nor I believed what I was saying about evil being everywhere in every person. I was not a hypocrite. Dr. N. Are you sure it wasn't false piety? You did not pretend to feel and be what you were not. S. No. I believed it. My undoing was my method of preaching and the love of the power over others that this ability gave me. Yes, I admit that failing one made life miserable for some of my flock. Not seeing the essential goodness in people, I was always suspicious because of my obsession with evil, and this corrupted me. Dr. N. Do you feel part of what you became was the result of the body you chose in this life? S. In a flat voice, yes, I lacked restraint. I chose a body with a feisty mind and allowed myself to be swept away. I was too confrontational as a preacher. Dr. N. And do you know why your soul mind chose to enter into this partnership in the body of a preacher who constantly intimidated people? Shit. I let it happen because it felt good to be in control. I was afraid of not being taken seriously enough. Dr. N. You were worried about the loss of control? S. Long pause. Yes, that one would be inadequate. Dr. N. By his use of a devil's mask, Do you think Skmlunda means what you stood for in the church? No, that's my teacher's way. I chose the body of a minister and he helped me with all this. One took a wrong turn out, it was not the wrong path. My faith was not a bad thing, but I became misguided and I misguided others. Skmlon wants me to see what it feels like to scare people rather than reason with them. He wanted me to feel the same fear that I gave to others. Note: I now move my subject into a group setting to learn more about how Skmlon teaches his students through the use of masks. Dr. N, who is the first person who comes to you? S, hesitates and is wary. It's an angel. Soft glowing white wings. Then, with recognition, okay, I am on to all of you. Enough. Dr. N, who is this angel? S, my dear friend, Diane. She has removed her angel's mask and is laughing and hugging me. Dr. N, I'm a little confused. Souls can assume any shape or create any features they want. Why bother with masks? S, the mask is similar to a figure of speech, a symbol one can hold in the hand to put on and pull off for effect. Diane is offsetting Skmlon's huge joke by being a loving angel for me while the others are laughing at what happened to me. Dr. N, what kind of individual is Diane? S, very loving and full of humor. She likes practical jokes, as does most of my group. They all know I take things too seriously. I don't like the masks very much, so they tease me. Dr. N, during your lessons, are masks used as a means of teaching about right and wrong behavior? S, yes, they are a means of acknowledgement of good or poor thinking, misconceptions. They identify aspects of our character which are positive and those which are undesirable, and we can role-play with each other. Dr. N, did Skmlon originate the use of this sort of prop for your group lessons? S, laughs, yes, and what he does makes an impression. This was a strange case, and 111 admits Skmlon had me going for a few minutes when one thought this client was taking me to a place no other had before. The treatment this subject received at the gateway by the use of a devil mask is an anomaly. Moreover, I have never encountered a guide whose behavior had such extravagance and provocation. In the chapters ahead we will see how drama plays an important part in soul group activity. The use of masks by Skmlon's group as a symbolic gesture to embody a belief system is rather unique in my experience. Masks do have a long tradition in our cultural life, where personification of divine and demonic power has been used to mock spirits which are feared and honor those spirits that are venerated. The devil mask has a history of tribal exorcism toward a harmful spirit. Case 18 is one where mythic spiritual practices were taken from Earth by a soul group director to serve as a wake-up call for his students. Spiritual energy restoration. Soul energy. We cannot define the soul in a physical way, because to do so would establish limits on something that seems to have none. I see the soul as intelligent light energy. This energy appears to function as vibrational waves similar to electromagnetic force, but without the limitations of charged particles of matter. Soul energy does not appear to be uniform. Like a fingerprint, each soul has a unique identity in its formation, composition and vibrational distribution. I am able to discern soul properties of development by color tones, yet none of this defines what the soul is as an entity. From years of study on how the soul interacts within a variety of human minds over many incarnations, and what it subsequently does in the spirit world, one have come to know something of its yearnings for perfection. This does not tell me what the soul is either. To fully understand soul energy, we would need to know all the aspects of its creation and, indeed, the consciousness of its source. This is a perfection that I cannot know, despite all my efforts investigating the mysteries of life after death. I am left then with examining the actions of this profound energy, substance, and how it reacts to people and events, and what it is striving to do in both physical and mental environments. If the soul's existence begins and is molded by pure thought, it is sustained by that thought as an immortal being. The soul's individual character enables it to influence its physical environment to give greater harmony and balance to life. Souls are an expression of beauty, imagination, and creativity. The ancient Egyptians said that to begin to understand the soul, one must listen to the heart. I think they were right. Standard treatment at the gateway. When we cross over and are met by our guides, I find the techniques they use at initial contact fall into two general categories. 1. Envelopment. Here turning souls are completely cloaked by a large circular mass of their guide's powerful energy. As the soul and guide come together, the soul feels as though they both are encased in a bubble. This is the more common method, which my subjects describe as pure ecstasy. 2. The focus effect. This alternate procedure of initial contact is administered a little differently. As the guide approaches, energy is applied to certain points at the edges of the soul's etheric body from any direction of the guide's choosing. We might be taken by the hand or held by the tops of our shoulders. From a side position, healing begins from a specific point of the etheric body in the form of a brushing caress followed by deep penetration. The choice of procedures depends on the preference of the guide and the condition of our soul energy at the time. In both instances there is an immediate infusion of potent, invigorating energy while we are projected forward. This is the introductory phase of the journey to our eventual spiritual destination. The more advanced souls, especially if they are undamaged, usually do not require assistance from a loving energy force. A review of the techniques employed by Case 1 on his wife, Alice, demonstrates elements of both the focus effect and envelopment on a living person by someone who is not yet a guide. Other cases in the last chapter indicate this is one way we begin our training in the use of healing energy before acquiring the status of a guide. During the exhilarating moments after initial contact, our guides might also expertly apply what I call energy penetration. This follow-up effect of energy transference has been described as being similar to the percolating of coffee. In Case 8, a soul used an energy filtration process involving smell on her husband, Charles. Healing emotional and physical injury, both in and out of the spirit world, emanates from a source of goodness. Positive energy flows to every part of the soul's being from the sender, whose own essence and wisdom is transmitted as well. My subjects are unable to explain the beauty and subtlety of this assimilation except to say it resembles the flowing of rejuvenating electricity. Emergency treatment at the gateway. When souls arrive at the gateway to the spirit world with energy that is in a deteriorated state, some of our guides engage in emergency healing. This is both a physical and mental healing exercise that takes place before the soul moves any further into the spirit world. One of my clients died in an auto accident in his last life where his leg was severed. He told me what occurred at the gateway as a result of this experience. When I reached the gateway, my guide saw the gaps in my energy aura and proceeded at once to push the damaged energy back into place. He molded it as clay to fill, reshape and smooth out the rough edges and broken intervals to make me whole again. The etheric, or soul body, is an outline of our old physical body which souls take into the spirit world. Essentially, it is an imprint of a human form we have not shed yet, like the skin of a reptile. This is not a permanent condition, although we might naturally create it later as a colorful, luminescent shape of energy. We know damaged body imprints from a past life can influence the current physical form of some people unless properly deprogrammed, so why not the reverse? There are souls who shed their body form completely at the moment of death. However, many souls with physical and emotional scars from life carry the imprint of this damaged energy back home. In terms of afflictions and soul healing, I learn a lot from the students, as well as the teachers in the spirit world. My next case was a rather unusual one for me, where a student guide was unable to handle damaged energy properly at the gate. My subject in this case had just come off a difficult life after being blown up in an artillery bombardment during a battle in World War I. Case 19. Dr. N. As you pass into the bright light following your death in the mud and rain of this battlefield, what do you see? S. A figure coming toward me dressed in a white robe. Dr. N. Who is this figure? S. I see Kate. She is a new teacher, recently assigned to our group. Dr. N. Describe her appearance and what she is communicating to you as she comes closer. S. She has a young, rather plain face with a large forehead. Kate. Radiates peace. I can feel it, but there is a concern too, and laughs. She won't come close to me. Dr. N. Why not? S. My energy is in bad shape. She says to me, Zed, you should be healing yourself. Dr. N. Why doesn't she help in this endeavor, Zed? S. Laughs again loudly. Kate does not want to get near all my scrambled negative energy from the war and the killing. Dr. N. I have never heard of a guide shying away from such responsibility with disassembled energy, Zed. Is she afraid of contamination? S. Still laughing, something like that. You have to understand, Kate is still rather new at this sort of work. She is not happy with herself. I can see that. Dr. N. Describe what your energy looks like right now. S. My energy is a mess. It is in chunks, like blocks, irregular, totally skewed out of alignment. Dr. N. Is this because you didn't escape from your body fast enough at the moment of death? S. For sure. My unit was taken by surprise. I normally cut loose from the body when I see death coming. Note, this case and many others have taught me that souls often leave their bodies seconds before a violent death. Dr. N. Well, can't Kate lend some assistance in rearranging your energy? S. She tries. A little. I guess it's too much for her at the moment. Dr. N. So what do you do? I begin to take her suggestion and try to help myself. I'm not doing too well, it's so scrambled. Then a powerful stream of energy hits me like water from a fire hose, and it helps me begin to reshape myself and push out some of the negative crap from that battle. Dr. N. I have heard of a place where energy is showered upon newly returned, damaged souls. Is that where you are now? Laughing, I guess it's from my guide, Bella. I can see him now. He is a real pro at this kind of thing. He is standing behind Kate, helping her. Dr. N. Then what happens to you? Bella fades away and Kate comes close to me and puts her arms around me, and we start to talk as she leads me away. Dr. N. Deliberately provoking, do you have any confidence in Kate after she treated you like some sort of leper? Frowns at me severely. Oh, come on now, that's a mite strong. It won't be long before she gets the hang of working with this kind of messed up energy. I like her a lot. She has many gifts. Right now, mechanics isn't one of them. Recovery areas for the less damaged soul, regardless of the specific energy treatment received by the soul at the gateway to the spirit world. Most all returning souls will continue on to some sort of healing station before finally joining their groups. All but the most advanced souls crossing back into the spirit world are met by benevolent spirits who make contact with their positive energy and escort needy souls to quiet recovery areas. It is only the more highly developed souls, with energy patterns that are still strong after their incarnations, who return directly to their regular activities. The more advanced souls appear to get over hardship more quickly than others. After a life, one man told me, most of the people I work with must stop and rest, but I don't need anything. I'm in too much of a hurry to get back and continue my program. Most recovery areas for the returning soul involve some kind of orientation back to the spirit world. It may be intense or moderate in scope, depending upon the condition of the soul. This usually includes a preliminary debriefing of the life just completed. Much more in-depth counseling will take place later with guides in group conferences and with our council of elders. I have written about these orientation procedures in Journey of Souls. The surroundings of recovery areas are identifiable earthly settings created out of our memories and what spiritual guides feel will promote healing. Orientation environments are not the same after each of our lives. One woman had the following to say, after dying in a German concentration camp in 1944, there are subtle differences in physical layout, depending upon the life one has just lived. Because I have just returned from a life filled with horror, cold, and bleakness, so everything is very bright to lighten my sorrow. There is even a comfortable fire next to me, so I'll have the feeling of added warmth and cheerfulness. Upon returning to the spirit world, often my subjects describe themselves as being in a garden setting, while others might say they are in a crystalline enclosure. The garden presents a scene of beauty and serenity, but what does crystal represent? It is not just in the orientation rooms that one hear about crystals. Crystal caves, for example, appear in the minds of some people who are spending time alone in reflection right after a life is over. Here is a typical statement about a crystal. Recovery center, my place of recovery is crystalline in composition, because it helps me connect my thoughts. The crystal walls have multicolored stones which reflect prisms of light. The geometric angles of these crystals send out moving bands of light which crisscross around and bring clarity to my thoughts. After talking to a number of clients out of trance, and with others who are knowledgeable about crystals, I came to realize that crystals represent thought enhancement through a balancing of energy. As a shamanic tool, the crystal is supposed to assist in tuning our vibrational pattern into a universal energy force while releasing negative energy. Bringing forth wisdom from an expanded consciousness through healing is the primary reason for being in a place of spiritual recovery. The next example involves a garden setting. I had a client who had been working on humility for many lives. In earlier incarnations, usually as a man, this soul had been caught up with host bodies that had become haughty, arrogant and even ruthless during my subject's occupancy. In a complete turnaround, this person's last life had been one of acceptance that bordered on passivity. Since this life was so out of character for my client, there was a feeling of failure when this soul reached the recovery area. I was then given this account: I am in a beautiful circular garden with willow trees and a pond with ducks in it. There is such tranquility here, and this scene softens the feelings of discouragement I have over my last performance. My guide, May Kill, brings me to a marble bench under an arbor draped with vines and flowers. I am so down over my wasted life because I overcompensated at every turn, going from one extreme to another. May Kill smiles and offers me refreshments. We drink nectar and eat fruit together and watch the ducks. While we do this, the aura of my old physical body moves further away from me. I begin to feel as though I am taking in his powerful energy as oxygen after a near drowning. May Kill is a gracious host, and he knows I need nourishment because I am judging myself in such a critical manner. I am always harder on myself than he is. We talk about my overcorrections of past mistakes and what I wanted to do that didn't get done or was only partially completed. May Kill offers encouragement that I still learned from this life, which will make the next one better. He explains the important thing was that I was not afraid to change. The whole garden atmosphere is so relaxing. I am already feeling better. From cases such as this, I have learned that our guides use the sense memory we had in our physical bodies to assist in our recovery. There are many ways to achieve this, such as the use of taste memory by May Kill. In the above case, I have also listened to descriptive scenes involving touch and smell. After receiving streams of bright white liquid energy, there have been subjects who describe additional treatments involving the sensations of sound and multicolored lights. After my cleansing shower, I move to an adjacent room to the place of rebalancing. While I float to the center of this enclosure, I see a vast array of spotlights overhead. One hear my name called. Banyan, are you ready? When I give my assent, sounds vibrate into me which resonate like tuning forks until the pitch is just right to make my energy bubble like frothy soap suds. It feels wonderful. Then the spotlights come on one at a time. In the beginning I am scanned by an intense beam of healing green light. It casts a circle around me as if I were on a stage. This light is designed to pick up my level of displaced energy at a. See what I have lost or damaged and make corrections. I think this is more effective because my energy is bubbling from the sound vibrations. Then I receive a wash of gold light for strength and blue for awareness. Finally, my own pinkish-white color is restored by one of the spotlights. It is soothing and loving, and I'm sorry when this is over. Regenerating severely damaged souls. There are certain displaced souls who have become so contaminated by their host bodies that they require special handling. In life they became destructive to others and themselves. This spectrum of behavior would primarily include souls who have been associated with evil acts that caused harm to other people through deliberate malice. There are souls who slowly become more contaminated from a series of lifetimes, while others are totally overcome by one body alone. In either case, these souls are taken to places of isolation where their energy undergoes a more radical treatment plan than with the typical returning soul. Contamination of the soul can take many forms and involve different grades of severity during an incarnation. A difficult host body might cause the less experienced soul to return with damaged energy, where a more advanced being would survive the same situation relatively intact. The average soul's energy will become shadowed when it has lived within a host body obsessed by constant fear and rage. The question is, by how much? Our thoughts, feelings, moods and attitudes are mediated by body chemicals which are released through signals of perceived threats and danger from the brain. Fight or flight mechanisms come from our primitive brain, not from the soul. The soul has a great capacity to control our biological and emotional reactions to life, but many souls are unable to regulate a dysfunctional brain. Souls display these scars when they leave a body that has deteriorated in this fashion. I have my own theory of madness. The soul comes into the fetus and begins its fusion with the human mind by the time the baby is born. If this child matures into an adult with organic brain syndromes, psychosis, or major affective disorders, abnormal behavior is the result. The struggling soul does not fully assimilate. When this soul can no longer control the aberrant behavior of its body, the two personas begin to separate into a dissociated personality. There may be many physical, emotional and environmental factors that contribute to a person becoming a danger to themselves and others. Here the combined self has been damaged. One of the red flags for souls who are losing their capacity to regulate deviant human beings is when they have had a series of lives in bodies demonstrating a lack of intimacy and displaying tendencies toward violence. This has a domino effect, with a soul asking for the same sort of body to overcome the last one. Because we have free will, our guides are indulgent. A soul is not excused from responsibility for a disturbed human mind it is unable to regulate, because it is a part of that mind. The problem for slow learner souls is they may have had a series of prior life struggles before occupying a body that escalated wrongdoing to a new level of evil. What happens to these disturbed souls when they return to the spirit world? I will begin with a quote from a client giving me an outsider's view of a place where severely damaged souls are taken. Some of my subjects call this area the City of Shadows. It is here where negative energy is erased. Since this is the place where so many souls are concentrated who have negative energy. It is dark to those of us outside. We can't go into this place where souls who have been associated with horror are undergoing alteration. And we would not want to go there anyway. It is a place of healing, but from a distance it has the appearance of a dark sea while I am looking at it from a bright, sandy beach. All the light around this area is brighter, in contrast, because positive energy defines the greater goodness of bright light. When you look at the darkness carefully, you see it is not totally black but a mixture of deep green. We know this is an aspect of the combined forces of the healers working here. We also know that souls who are taken to this area are not exonerated. Eventually, in some way, they must redress the wrongs they perpetrated on others. This they must do to restore full positive energy to themselves. Subjects who are familiar with damaged souls explained to me that not all of the more terrible memories of bad deeds are erased. It is known that if the soul did not retain some memory of an evil life, it would not be accountable. This knowledge by the soul is relevant for future decisions. Nevertheless, the resurrection of the soul in the spirit world is merciful. The soul mind does not fully retain all the lurid details of harming others in former host bodies after treatment. If this were not true, the guilt and association with such lives would be so overpowering to the soul they might refuse to reincarnate again to redress these wrongs. These souls would lack the confidence to ever dig themselves out of pits of despair. I understand there are souls whose acts in host bodies were so heinous they are not permitted to return to earth. Souls are strengthened by regeneration with the expectation they can keep future potentially malevolent bodies in check. Of course, once in our new body, the amnesiac blocks of certain past life mistakes prevent us from being so inhibited we would not progress. There are differences in the regeneration process between moderately and severely damaged souls. After listening to a number of explanations about kinds of energy treatments, I have come to this conclusion: the more radical approach of energy cleansing is one of remodeling energy, while the less drastic method is reshaping. This is an oversimplification because there is much I don't know about these esoteric techniques. The fine art of energy reconstruction is handled by non-reincarnating masters who are not in my office answering questions. I work with the trainees. Case 20 will provide some insight into the mechanics of energy reshaping, while Case 21 will address remodeling. Case 20. My subject in this case is a practitioner of chiropractic and homeopathic medicine who currently specializes in repolarizing the out-of-balance energy patterns of patients. This client has been a healer for thousands of years on Earth and is called Selim in the spirit world. Dr. N. Selim, you have told me about your advanced healing group in the spirit world and how the 5 of you are in specific energy training. I would like to know more about your work. Would you begin by telling me what your advanced study group is called and what you do? Yes, we are in training to be regenerators. We work to reshape, to reorganize displaced energy in the place of the holding ground. Dr. N, is this place a designated area for souls whose energy has been disrupted? Yes, the ones in bad condition. Those who will not be returning to their groups right away. They will stay in the holding ground. Dr. N, do you make this determination at the gateway to the spirit world? S. No, I do not. I have not yet reached that status. This decision is made by their guides, who will call upon the masters who are training me. Dr. N, then tell me, Selim, when do you enter the picture after a severely damaged soul crosses back to the spirit world? S. I am called by my instructor when it is felt I can assist in this energy healing. Then I move to the holding ground. Dr. N, please explain to me why you use the term holding ground, and what this place is like. S. The damaged soul is held here until their regeneration is complete, so they are healthy again. This sphere is designed as a beehive structure, covered with cells. Each soul has its own place to reside during the healing. Dr. N, this sounds very much like the descriptions I have heard about the incubation of new souls after their creation and before they are assigned to groups. S. That's true. These are spaces where energy is nurtured. Dr. N, so are these beehive spaces all in the same place and used law, the same purpose are both for regeneration and creation? S. No, they are not. I work in the place of damaged souls. Newly created souls are not damaged. I can tell you nothing about those places. Dr. N, that's fine, Selim. I appreciate learning about those areas where you do have knowledge and experience. Why do you think you were assigned this sort of work? S. With pride, because of my long history in so many lives of working with wounded people. When I asked if I could specialize as a regenerator, my wish was granted and I was assigned to a training class. Dr. N, and so when a severely wounded soul is returned to the holding ground, are you a soul who could be called to assist? S. Shakes his head negatively. Not necessarily. I am only requested to go to the regeneration areas to work with energy that has been moderately damaged. I am a beginner. There is so much I don't know. Dr. N, well, I have a great deal of respect for what you do know, Selim. Before I ask you about your level of work, can you explain why a damaged soul would be sent to the holding ground? S. They were overcome by their last body. Many are souls who have been repeatedly suppressed in previous lives as well. These are the ones who become stuck in life after life, making no progress. Each body has contaminated them a little more. I work with these souls more than the ones who have had terrible energy damage, either from one life or many lives. Dr. N, do the souls whose energy has been gradually depleted ask for help, or are they forced to come to the holding ground? S. Promptly, no one is forced. They cry for help because they have become totally ineffectual, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Their teachers see they do not recover sufficiently between lives. They want regeneration. Dr. N, does the same cry for help come from souls who have been severely damaged? S. Pause, perhaps less so. It is possible that a life is so destructive it has damaged the identity of the soul. Dr. N, such as being involved with cruel acts of violence. S. That would be one reason, yes. Dr. N, Selim, please give me as many details as you can about what happens when you are called to the holding ground to work on a case with severely depleted or altered energy. Before meeting the new arrival, one of the Restoration Masters outlines the meridians of energy we will be regenerating. We review what is known about the damaged soul. Dr. N. This sounds like you are surgeons preparing for a procedure, with X-rays before the operation. With delight, yes, this gives me an idea of what to expect in three-dimensional imagery. I love the challenges involved with energy repair. Dr. N. Okay, take me through this process. From my perspective there are 3 steps. We begin by examining all particles of damaged energy. Then these dark areas of blockage are removed and what is left have the voids are rewoven with an infusion of new purified light energy. It is overlaid and molded into the repaired energy for strengthening. Dr. N. And does reweaving energy mean reshaping to you, as opposed to something even more radical? Yes. Dr. N. Are you personally involved with all phases of this operation? No, I am being trained in the first step of assessment and can assist a little with the second step, where the modifications are not as complex. Dr. N. Before you actually begin to work, what do you see when a soul's energy has been severely damaged? Damaged energy looks like a cooked egg where the white light has solidified and hardened. We must soften this and fill the black voids. Dr. N. Let's talk a moment about this blackened energy. Interrupt. I should have added that the damaged energy can also create lesions. These fissures are voids themselves, caused by radical physical or emotional damage. Dr. N. What are the effects of disrupted energy on the incarnated soul? Pause. Where the energy is mottled and not distributed evenly, this is due to long-term energy deterioration. Dr. N. You talked about rearranging and repairing old energy with new purified energy for healing. How is this done? By intense charge beams. It is delicate work because you must keep your own vibrational tuning in matched sequences with that generated by the soul. Dr. N. Oh, so this becomes personal. A master's own energy is used as a conduit. Yes, but there are other sources of new purified energy that I don't use or know much about because of my lack of experience. Dr. N. Selim, you have told me how warped energy is softened and allowed to flow back onto the right spaces, but introducing new purified energy concerns me. With all that reconfiguration, aren't you changing the immortal identity of these souls? No, we have altered. To strengthen what is there. To bring the soul close to its original form. We don't want this to happen again. We don't want them back. Dr. N. Is there somewhere you can test your repair work after it is completed? Yes, we can place a field of simulated negative energy around the regenerated soul layers of liquid to see if this can filter through the structure of our repairs. As I said, we don't want them back. Dr. N. One last question, Selim. When you are finished, what happens to the regenerated soul? It varies. All of them stay with us a while. There is healing with sound, vibrational music, light, color. And when these souls are released, much care is taken with their next incarnations, and the selections of bodies, size, if the soul has been in a body that damaged others in former lives. Well, we have fortified these souls to go back and begin again. My next case is an example of severe remodeling. Case 21 involves a particular class of soul, one called the hybrid soul. In Chapter 8, Case 61 is another representative of this type of soul. I believe the hybrid souls are especially prone to self-destruction on Earth because they have incarnated on alien worlds before coming here fairly recently. There are hybrid souls who have great difficulty adapting to our planet. If I find this to be true, it is probable their first incarnation here was within the last few thousand years. The others have already adapted or left Earth for good. Less than a quarter of all my clients are able to recall memories of visiting other worlds between lives. This activity by itself does not make them hybrids. An even smaller percentage of my cases have memories of actually incarnating on alien worlds before they came to Earth. These are the hybrid souls. The hybrid is usually an older soul who, for a number of reasons, has decided to complete their physical lives on our planet. Their old worlds may no longer be habitable, or they may have lived on a gentle world where life was just too easy and they want a difficult challenge with a world like Earth that has not yet reached its potential, regardless of the circumstances. For a soul leaving a world, I have found these former incarnations typically involve life forms which were slightly above, about equal, or slightly below the intelligence capabilities of the human brain. This is by design. Hybrid souls who have formerly incarnated on planets with civilizations possessing a much higher technology than Earth, such as those with space travel abilities, are smarter because they are an older race. Also, I have noticed that when I do have a hybrid soul as a client with former experience on a telepathic world, they tend to have greater psychic abilities than normal. Sometimes a hybrid client will confuse their early incarnations on other physical worlds with being on Earth until we sort out that their first world only resembled a place on Earth. Visions of once living on the island nation of Atlantis is a good example. Without discounting the possibility that Atlantis once existed on Earth thousands of years ago, I believe the source of many earthly myths come from our soul memories of former existences on other worlds. I think hybrid soul is an appropriate term for those souls among us of mixed incarnation origins. Such souls have developed from being in hosts that are genetically different than humans. I have seen gifted people in this life who started their development on another world. Nevertheless, there is a dark side to this experience, as a level VE subject in training to be a restoration master will explain. Case 21. Dr. N, since you work with the severely damaged souls, can you give me a little more information about your duties? I'm in a special section working with those souls who have become lost in a morass of evil. Dr. N, after learning this subject works only with those souls from Earth who have incarnated on other worlds before they came to Earth. In this section, are these the hybrid souls I have heard about? Yes, in a restoration area where we deal with those who have become atrocity souls. Dr. N, what a terrible name to call a soul. I'm sorry you are bothered by this, but what else would you call a being associated with acts of evil that are so serious they are unsalvageable in their present state? Dr. N, I know, but the human body had a lot to do with cutting me off. We don't consider that to be an excuse. Dr. N. Okay, then please continue with the nature of your work. S. I am a second stage restorer. Dr. N. What does that mean? S. When these souls lose their bodies, they are met by their guides and perhaps one close friend. That first stage does not last long, and then the souls who have been involved with horrible acts are brought here to us. Dr. N. Why doesn't the first stage last as long as with other souls? S. We don't want them to begin to forget the impact of their deeds, the harm and pain they caused on earth. The second stage separates them from the uncontaminated souls. Dr. N. This sounds like you are running a leper colony. S. Abruptly, I am not amused by that remark. Dr. N. After apologizing, you are not saying that all souls who commit evil acts are hybrid souls, as you defined them? S. Of course not, that's my section. But you should understand, some real monsters on Earth are hybrids. Dr. N. I thought the spirit world was a place of order with masters of superior knowledge. If these hybrid souls are contaminated, abnormalities in human form are souls with the inability to adjust to the emotional makeup of the human body. Why were they sent here? This indicates to me the spirit world is not infallible. S. A vast majority are fine, and they make great contributions to human society. You would have us deny all souls the opportunity to come to Earth because some turn out badly. Dr. N. No, of course not. Let's move on. What do you do with these souls? S. Others, way above me, examine their contaminated energy in light of just how the world of their earlier experience impacted on their human body. They want to know if this was an isolated case, or if other souls from that planet have had problems on Earth. If that is true, other souls from that world might not be permitted to come to Earth again. Dr. N. Please tell me more about the section. S. My area is not devoted to souls who have committed one serious act of wrongdoing. We work with habitually cruel lifestyles. These souls are then given a choice. We will do our best to clean up their energy by rehabilitation, and if we think they are salvageable, they are offered a choice to come back to Earth in roles where they will receive the same type of pain they caused, only multiplied. Dr. N. Could a salvageable soul be one who committed terrible atrocities in life but showed great remorse? S. Probably. Dr. N. I thought karmic justice was not punitive. S. It's not. The offer represents an opportunity for stabilization and redemption. It usually will take more than one life to endure an equal measure of the same kind of pain they cause to many people. That's why I said multiplied. Dr. N. Even so, I suppose most souls take this option. S. You are mistaken. Most are too fearful that they will fall again into the same patterns. They also lack the courage to be victims in a number of future lives. Dr. N. If they won't come back to Earth, then what do you do? S. These souls will then go the way of those souls we consider to be unsalvageable. We will then disseminate their energy. Dr. N. Is this a form of remodeling energy or what? S. Yes. We call it the breaking up of energy. That's what dissemination means. Certainly, it is remodeled. We break up their energy into particles. Dr. N. I thought energy could not be destroyed. Aren't you destroying the identity of these contaminated souls. The energy is not destroyed, it is changed and converted. We might mix one particle of the old energy with 9 particles of new fresh energy provided for our use. The dilution will make that which is contaminated ineffectual, but a small part of the original identity remains intact. Dr. N. So, the negative badness energy is mixed with overdoses of new goodness energy to render the contaminated soul harmless. Laughs, not necessarily goodness but rather freshness. Dr. N. Why would any soul resist dissemination? Even though those souls who accept these procedures for their own benefit recover and eventually lead productive lives on earth and elsewhere, there are souls who will not stand for any loss of identity. Dr. N. Then what happens to these souls who refuse your help? Many will just go into limbo, to a place of solitude. I don't know what will eventually happen to them. As I have said before, soul contamination does not only come from the physical body. Certainly, the energy damage described in the last 2 cases indicates that souls themselves are impure beings who also contribute to their own distress. Before continuing, I want to make a statement about karmic choices here that is important for all of us to keep in mind. When we see people who are victims of great adversity in life, this does not necessarily mean they were perpetrators of evil or wrongdoing of any kind in a former life. A soul with no such past associations might choose to suffer through a particular aspect of emotional pain to learn greater compassion and empathy for others by volunteering in advance for a life of travail. There are cases when a soul's energy damage is moderate, requiring special attention, but not to the degree where a restoration master is needed. The following quote is a report from a client about a gifted healing soul who works at a recovery station. I think of her as a combat nurse managing a field hospital, and my client agrees. Oh, it's Jimmy, I'm so glad. One haven't seen her in about 3 or 4 lives, but her deprogramming and restoration energy techniques are just superlative. There are 5 others being attended to in this place whom I don't know. Yumi comes over and clasps me to her. She gets inside me and blends my tired energy with her own. I feel the infusion of her stimulating vibrations, and she performs a tiny bit of reshaping. It is as if I am receiving a gentle reaffirmation of that which created my own energy. Soon, I am ready to leave, and Yumi gives me a beautiful smile. Goodbye till next time.